At the time of filming this video, I am 41 years old, and if I could go back and talk to my 20-year-old self to give advice on how to play jazz a lot faster, this is exactly what I would say. Through my musical journey, I would often find myself overthinking and overcomplicated things, and in the end I realized that I'm doing it because I love it. So my advice to myself is, hey, pick up the guitar and play a lot. There's not an amount of mind and thinking and planning that's going to solve that thing. Play your heart out and don't overthink it. Often I would get anxious, looking at a certain player, developing chops and going like, how can I reach this? What's the solution? Is this a book or method, or did I practice not enough? In the end, it's like, hey, if you love it, invest your time in playing the guitar. In recent years, I've heard a lot of students tell me,
hey Mark, I've been practicing and doing all the stuff, learning the tunes, but I think I'm worse. I think I'm playing less good than before.
I've been through this myself in my 20s, my 30s, and I think I picked up on what the lesson here is. Perfection's a moving target, meaning the goalposts will constantly move. Why does that happen? I think it's because our ears also get better. So I'm at a certain point where I'm not aware of the flaws. I get better, my ears get better. I'm a better musician, but I hear more of the flaws, and therefore I conclude that I'm worse off, but I am not, right? So remember, the goalposts will always move, and perfectionism in general, trying to get things exactly perfect, is a killer of creativity. So I don't know if you'll relate to this, but often I would go and hear live jazz and hear a player that's playing all the right vocabulary. He knows all the tunes. He's playing sort of in time, and I see it's like, yeah, that's F sharp minor 7 flat 5 to a B7 altered and whatever. And there's that thing that's missing, right? So often that, en français, de je ne sais quoi, is how something is performed, the feel of it or the intention. So it's like, in a way, saying playing with your heart. So what I would tell my younger self is like, you have this thing that's very obvious, like a D minor 7 arpeggio, but how it's going to be played will matter more in the end than what it is, because the how is all these other variables of music, like nuance, dynamics, the phrasing, is it laid back, is it connecting with the drummer? So this is a big takeaway for me, in that we often wind up playing really simple stuff that sounds good, and the reason it sounds good, it's because of the way we play it and not what is actually played. So while I lived in Montreal, I would often go to jazz clubs, watch live gigs, or go to jam sessions, and I would be surprised to see a certain musician, say a bass player, take the gig. So it wasn't even about me. I would go, well, that guy is good, but I know at least a handful, like 5 or 10 guys I could call up that are way better technically, that know more tune, playing better time, that have more chops and whatever. And the lesson here is like, look, that guy is best friends with the sax player that booked the gig, and that's okay, right? So that was a big thing for me to go, why aren't the people that are the best getting all the gigs? Actually, it's about relationship and community. So it was a big takeaway from me to go, you can be as good as you can and as good as you want, but it doesn't guarantee that you'll get booked or people will call you. If you're a dick around people, or if you don't really know the tunes, if you may be really well versed, but the relationships typically get the big gigs. Taking the leap, booking the gig, booking the call, even grabbing someone's business card at a jam, going, yeah, man, we should play, grab that coffee. Often, I'm a bit reluctant to meet with new people and going out to their homes and saying, we'll have a jam sessions, but I've had some of the most awesome transformational experiences, or came across new records I was not aware of, or new chord progressions, or new ways of doing it. So hanging out and just immersing myself with the people was a really big takeaway, meaning if I'm scared of something, if I'm scared of going to that jam session because I'm thinking, no, they're more advanced, they're not going to want to play with me, this is exactly the thing I'd be doing. And I've been coaching people on that as well, my guitar students that think that they're not advanced enough and that they will somehow reach this level so that then they can finally give themselves permission. I'm just going to tell you, permission is now. And if musicians are seasoned and more advanced, typically they'll be really kind to accompany you on your journey as well, which is one of my other points. So going out to a jam session for me as a kid was learning in the trenches. You're under fire and someone's calling the radio for air support. That's the jam. So a jam session playing one tune, I don't know, like The Night Has a Thousand Eyes or Girl from Ipanema, I'm playing for 3 minutes in total, and the takeaways from that are like practicing for 6 months in my own practice room. So it's a really, that's the name of my coaching program. I call it the Jazz Guitar Accelerator, but it's a way to accelerate your skills, to go out and to be in a situation where there's no BS. You can't stop the tempo. The show must go on, as they say. So the train leaves the station and then you're playing the tune. That's, for me, some of the most invaluable learning lessons, playing with piano players, playing with drummers, more advanced, less advanced, playing with sometimes international jazz stars that'd be touring through Montreal and go at a night at a jam and go, man, I never knew I could play with those people. So taking the leap is really important here. For those of you who know me, I have a really rational scientific background, so I graduated with a degree in statistics. I love math. I also have some actuarial credentials, and I've worked here as an analyst for the government. So that side of me is really, really strong when I get into the music. However, I've always let myself be, especially in my 30s, more of a space cadet for expression. And here's why. Everything else in my life is really straight up, like, spreadsheets and organizing schedules, and I'm very methodical, maybe a bit OCD around the edges. But the point here is that my music is sacred in that I know it's about self-expression. So this is the advice I would give my younger self, to go, like, for sure, practice the scales and do everything technical. But when you play your heart out, because this whole thing is about self-expression. It's not necessarily about a specific aesthetics, but it's about expressing things that are beyond human emotions, or more nuanced human emotions, if you want. So I do remember my past 3, 5, or 10 gigs, and there were specific moments where I was like, I missed the chord, I missed the introduction, I missed the outro, I missed the cue, I may have played it wrong, or I'm soloing and I'm not in the right key. No one else remembers that. There's just me, all right? So I'm trying not to overinflate the mistakes. I got my entry point into jazz, as a lot of people say, reading music with the theory of things, looking at standards, 13 chords. I came from a rock background, right? So all these things were really new. And in the end, the big lesson, the big takeaway for my younger self would be listen. But deep listening. So there are pioneers. Take it or leave it. Enjoy Wes Montgomery or not, doesn't really matter. That guy was really a pioneer. So deeply listen to what this guy's doing. Also listen to the bandmates. So listening is a big thing, right? Because we make it very mental. We make it about patterns and practice and theory. But in the end, it's a sonic thing. It's within our ears, right? So listening to the bandmates, listening to the singer, to see if she called the cue at the end of the verse or whatever. And listening to myself is a big, big thing. So when I finally was able to hear how I sounded, and that goes through, of course, filming myself recording, even practicing in front of the mirror, or even filming practice sessions just to see how I behaved around music and how I actually sounded, getting that perspective on almost an external view of my sound is truly listening to myself. So it means that perhaps while I'm playing, I don't have my full RAM to listen to myself, but I can certainly record that and then take the time outside of my practice session to listen to myself. The lessons from listening to myself are self-explanatory. It's like, oh yeah, you're rushing. Don't do that. Oh yeah, your fingering is you're always going like that. Yeah, don't do that. So that's a big takeaway. This is, in a way, by the way, link in description, in a way that I work with coaching students to do custom and tailored feedback, which means that you get an external eye, not just like new information from a private lesson or like taking a masterclass or a workshop or book. It's more like, hey, this is what you're doing, this is what's working, this is not what's not working, and fix it. So having a fast feedback loop on these things has been the most helpful. I've done it with myself and with mentors, with some of my mentors, and now we're providing that service online as well. So personally, you guys may not know this, but I'm more introverted. I don't necessarily like to go out and meet a lot of people, and it does drain my battery very fast. So you can only imagine, to go into a crowded jazz club, it will also drain my battery. However, I'll tell you this, I'll tell young Marc this: go out to the gig, even if it's just for one set for 45 minutes, because live jazz has a magical component, which is improvised music. What happens on that night will not happen again, ever. And there's magic in interaction and interplay, and there's magic in whatever can happen. Surprises can happen, and this can be very inspiring. All right, this is for younger Marc. This is for 20-year-old Marc. You got your practice list, you got your practice routine, yes. You got all these 13 items that you want to check off as you go. Yeah, don't do that. You're not going to practice 13 items. Although you may practice 13 different things today, but you're not going to be able to keep it up. So it's better and way more efficient, and proof is in the pudding, really, for me, to have a shorter practice session, shorter list of things, and to consistently come back at it. And to be very deliberate, going like, nope, I don't have time for this now, it's going to be my next thing. But right now I'm doing these few things really well and consistently, and then results can come up. It's like a volcano. I tried later in my life to keep my practice sessions short and focused, almost like a workout. I can't do 50 push-ups now if you give me enough time, but I can't do 50 push-ups again at noon, and then another 50 push-ups at 5 p.m., another 50 push-ups at 7 p.m. That's not going to work out. So do the work out intensively, go back to bed, the neurons will connect, everything will be better tomorrow, and that's the best way to go. It's just, ultimately, it's patience and being very consistent with practice. All right, that's also for younger Marc. You can't multitask a practice session. Here's what I mean, is there's a cost in task switching. If I'm practicing or if I'm doing anything else, often journaling, and I have my son come and distract me, I find that the time I miss, say, from my journal is not just the time that I was distracted by my son, but it's the ramping out time and then the ramping up time. These may be longer than the actual time lost. So if I'm trying to multitask something, it means I will jump from one task to the next. So I find for myself, it's better to do mini sprints even with a timer. I will use a kitchen timer and practice for a total of 7 minutes completely focused. While the 7 minutes goes, I don't have to look at the clock. I don't have to think how much longer do I have left? What am I doing with this? There's no thought involved, because that whole thinking process, it costs a lot of time for me to ramp in and out. So I would do the scales and whatever, 7 minutes. And then there's a chord thing I'm working on, 12 minutes, and then 5 minutes of this. So the timer also has a feature of helping me stop. If I don't stop myself, I may invest too much energy, like an hour or more, into a single topic, and then I have no time left for the rest of the stuff. So again, this tails to the previous lesson, which is there's lots to be said about being really focused for short amount of time, short bursts, and doing it over the long haul to get amazing results. All right, when I was about 22 years old, I was playing a lot of drop two inversions on my top strings. You guys have been around the block, you know the books, you know the Barry Harris stuff, yeah, that. So I would systematically play in high registers, full chords, and every time there'd be a chord on the song at a jam, I'd play like 3 or 4 pivots of inversions of the same chord, but I would always play like that. Not to say that it was wrong. If someone would listen to me harmonically and go, yeah, you're playing the D minor chord in 3 inversions, it's correct, but sounds bad. So the lesson here is like, it's best to have like a handful of voicings, like 3, 4, or 5 voicings, and play them with good taste and good timing to really complement what's happening, rather than trying to show off. So I think I was, as a kid, in poor taste. And I developed in that area until I found out that I did not to play every single voicing I knew in every song, right? So that's a big takeaway, just to use parsimony in the comping with the amount of voicings, because a C major is a C major is a C major. No one in the audience or your bandmates will know if you did 3 inversions of your C major or just a 1 inversion. So long as it sounds good and it's in good time, it's going to work out in the end. I wound up going to the music store. Maybe I'm 22 years old, and I think I dodged a bullet because I was about to get a Godin. You guys know my Godin. And it was a MIDI plugin in which you had the pedal, so you could plug it in and have flute sounds and synthesizers and stuff. And I was really fond of the organ sound. Like, oh my God, I could go to gigs and play with that organ sound and call for my friends. Gonna sound like an organ. OMG. Assume it wasn't about the money. Like, assume I could afford it. And I dodged a bullet in that I think I toyed with knobs in the store for about an hour and a half. And then I stood up, shook it off out of myself. I'm like, no. And I went home, and I never touched that thing again. Maybe I will in the future. But the point here is, that gear would not have made me sound better. The sound is in my head. That's the biggie. So whenever I found myself, I think I caught up to that lesson relatively fast, although I splurge on gear and pedals and amps and whatnot. When I find myself turning knobs too much, I'm like, oh shoot, I'm not making music. And I love making music. Do I love tweaking knobs? I mean, if you're a studio guy, whatever, I totally understand that. That's your thing, like mixing and mastering, recording. I'm not into that. I'm into like playing. The big lesson for a younger Marc here would be, don't assume that the gear is going to change how you sound drastically, because you still sound like yourself, whatever instrument or piece of gear you pick up. So I have a saxophone friend, tenor sax, who shall remain nameless because he may be watching this, but there's a time where this kid, maybe 5 years younger than me, we played together, and I would often ask him to play a certain tune and say, I don't know it, right? So I would like, do you know it? And then eventually my rule of thumb here is like, if you get asked 3 times, shame on you. Like, you go out to a local jam after weeks and months, and then you get asked the same tune systematically and you say no systematically, myself, I would give in. They love to play that tune. They love Wayne Shorter stuff or whatever. They love Alone Came Betty. I don't know if you know that song. It's like, learn it so at least you can collaborate. It's a community thing, right? So my friend, I'm going to keep this lesson short, but that's sort of the 3 strikes rule, shame on you type of thing, then I'm never going to ask you again. But my friend and I, the sax player, we played a gig with a bass player, and he criticized the bass player, which was way more advanced than us. And I just told him, dude, learn Stella by Starlight. Like, you can't criticize this guy who's got 20 years of experience on the jazz scene, and you can't play Stella by Starlight. And I've been asking you every week for the past 2 years, right? So that's the takeaway. Learning the tunes is really important. It's at the center of my approach. You can see this, jazzcarlsons.net/pathway, where I explain how do we take the tunes to make them the central piece of our learning, but also the fact that it's good just to immerse myself in the community to learn the tunes that these guys love playing. It may be different in local jams, in local areas. Some people may love the song Beautiful Love, while in other places, in other states, it may be like around midnight that gets called off. And it doesn't really matter because a song is a song. But yeah, learning the tunes is a great tip. All right, young Marc, this is the one hardest to swallow pill. It's good to have good guitar technique, to have good gear and stuff, but 90% of progress that will happen you're playing takes place on the tunes and specifically the chord progressions to the tune. That's it. The tunes are where it's at because we get context. We get the minor 2/5s, the major 2/5s. We get parts of blues progression. We get the passing diminished. We get the this, we get the that. Where do they get it when they write a book about this stuff? They get it from context. So playing a lot on very specific context means that the standard progressions become like laboratories for you, young Marc, to play with these things. So the scales and the chords and the inversion, they take place over certain things. Same thing if I look at a Wes Montgomery solo I want to transcribe or at least learn, it's never just about the line, it's about the context of the line. So I will simplify your life, younger Marc, if you're watching this. If you look at an hour of practice, you should definitely be practicing 45 to 50 minutes within standards chord progressions. Whether it's the tunes for your next gigs, or it's just a blues progression, or it's just a blues progression with a variation, or it's an arpeggio technique that you're trying to put on all the things you are, it's got to be on the tunes. It's got to be. It's got to be. There's no... That's the hardest pill to swallow, but it's the magic pill. So swallow that pill. Work on the tunes a lot of the time, and just thank me later. One of my university teachers mentioned about bebop, that they took them to the extreme. So yeah, Charlie Parker and Dizzy and Miles and stuff were playing really fast tempos, like 300. But at the same time, they played a lot of ballads. So a 40 BPM ballad, I think, is as challenging, if not more, than an up-tempo. So it's important in jazz to push yourself, younger Marc, to go towards the extremes, because playing around 100 or 120 BPM is somewhere in the middle. It's good as a testing ground. It's good as a learning ground, say, to put things together. But as soon as possible, crank up and crank down your tempo so you can work on these extremes, because that's really where your skills and abilities will develop, not just technically, but also in the ears. Context is everything. That one is easy because I've already talked about it a little, that it's important to play on tunes, but also context in terms of analysis. Whenever I come across a chord progression or a certain mode application or scales, whatever, the question's always like, okay, where did that come from? And where's it going to? Because that will dictate how the label of it, the usage of it, or the importance of it. So don't be misled. Sometimes you'll see a chord and say, well, I think that's a diminished 7 chord. I'm like, yes, but it starts on a D sharp note, and that's actually a B chord. Why is that? Because we're playing Autumn Leaves and it's a B7, right? So there's often, we will try to label things and narrow them down, but the broader context often gives us labels, names, and importance. So anything we play only matters within a flow. The flow is like the current. We work here, we're going there, and we're here, and then we're going to go to that next thing. As a younger jazz player, I think I was often playing some tentative chords and scales. I would play a chord during a bass solo and in a way like almost apologize for the chord while I was playing it. So that reflects and mirrors a perhaps lack of confidence I had. I did a lot of things just to try, and in a way that you could feel the belief that, oh, I'm not good enough in my playing, which is fascinating, right? So if I think I'm not good enough in my playing, it does mean also that, and that's like an open heart YouTube channel. Thank you guys for watching. It means that there's inner belief about myself unrelated to the guitar, just going like, hey, you're not worthy. You know, it's sort of a hopelessness type of I'm not good enough. Thank God I'm actively working on these things, but this is an interesting thing to look at any musical measure to go like, oh, this is what's happening, and it's only a mirror of real life, actually. Make it look easy. Young Marc, make it look easy. I'm going to pick like Wayne Gretzky, pick any athlete. It's not even in music. And when these guys do it at the highest level, it just looks easy. It is not. It is not, but they make it look easy. So really successful improvisers they don't necessarily look frantic. Although people say, well, I watched Metheny play. I know he's a bit cramped and whatever, but he's very chill at the same time. So there's an amount of calm and chill and cool and sort of each thing in its own time that comes from true mastery. So that's what we're looking at. And I think for me as a younger player, I was trying to force things and I was not necessarily calm, and I was going, it has to look hard, or at least like I got to show off, like maybe cringe and go like, yeah, because it's hard. But actually it's quite the opposite. My favorite players, you watch them, Ed Bickert, Wes Montgomery, Jim Hall, Kenny Burrell. Let's not put Metheny in that category. These guys, they just sit there and they let it come out. It's incredible how physically they're relaxed. And some of my best students shout out, like I see some of you guys in the video. I think I talked to Neil recently. It's like, yeah, super solid posture. There's none of that. There's no tension in the arms and anywhere. And even if what we're playing is not yet at the level which we want, the body relaxation is a huge, huge piece of it. There's this workout I published on jazz guitar lessons, oh my God, probably 10 or 15 years ago. And it's to show 15 or 16 progressions on which you improvise. And I go like, yeah, you guys should do key of the week, right? So we start with a 1-6-2-5, we do a blues, and then
we do this, and then we do a Lady Bird, the backdoor progression to a minor one, to the passing diminishes and minor 2-5s.
And eventually I go, well, you should do this on a key each week, right? You're in C now, and next week go up in the cycle of fourths. So in 12 weeks, you'll be back at C. So that was good for me back then. But the main takeaway would be, I first had to be able to play on the basics in one key first. So I'll sort of spell it out for my younger Marc, like before you start to make it very complex and go in all of these keys. Younger Marc, please start with the C key, 1-6-2-5, 2-5-1, blues, and really narrow it down so you can work on this for like 6 months until like, yeah, I hear the changes. It's really sounding good. I'm solid. I can comp. I can play some of the chords and scales. And eventually, it's best to go to 2 or 3 keys before doing all the 12 keys, because
You have to play everything in all the keys.
like it's not wrong for people aspiring to be professionals. But at the same time, if I started with C and really did a good job, I could go to F and G and maybe A or E and do a few keys and get really solid in those before I expand. Truly mastering C major really means that I have a home to get back to. It's like a port. You're at C and then you have the port. So you can hear and relativize everything in different keys if your key of C is really, really solid. And C is just the one for me. Your home key may be G major or whatever. It doesn't matter. But that's a big takeaway. I often encounter students that want to do the ear training softwares, where you have the app and you use recognize as perfect fifth or third. That's cool. It's a good tool, but at the same time, I think the pattern recognition, it's important for me to state the big lesson, the big takeaway I would tell my younger self is, you can identify these things by pattern and by sound and by feel of them or color, even if you don't yet have a label. You know how it feels to go from a 2 to a 5, 2-5, 2-5, repeat it a few times, like, oh, that's how it sounds. So when it comes up, it may not be that I can hear it and write it down immediately, but at least I can recognize. So this ties into the like deeply lesson, if you will, but at the same time, the theory, the label of it only comes after. And I think that's true for music history in general. It's like we came up with the theory to explain what we found sound good, and seldom do we have like the theory as the groundworks for how we have intuition and composition and inspiration. So we really, that's sort of a flipping on its head for me, which is, hey, it came here first, and then we're going to find a way to explain it, but the explanation may not like really make sense, but this, what I hear and what I sing in the shower always makes sense, because I'm not singing Phrygian in the shower, right? I'm not singing drop 2 inversions with passing diminish in the shower. I'm singing Fly Me to the Moon like Sinatra, right? So that's a big takeaway as well. First actual college one-on-one private lesson I had of my career was with Michael, and he studied under Mick Goodrick, which was tremendous, right? And he went to Mick Goodrick in the 80s for private lessons. He would drive down to Boston and go like, yeah, I want to learn stuff, whatever. Michael was already really well-versed, like a seasoned player at that time. And Mick took a thing, maybe a metronome or something, to practice room, and said, you're looking at this, but you have to look at that way, and that way, and that way, and from the bottom, etc. So perspective is everything, in that whenever there's a piece of material, like a chord or a scale or a part of a song, it can always be so many things. So my quest as a player has been to find the common trunk, like the tree trunk with the bark, like this is where it's at, and to eventually find out that there's so many leaves that can come out of that tree. But if I'm stuck at seeing a leaf, another leaf, and I have to amass all that information, it doesn't make sense. But when I see what's common between all these things, then I can let my creativity flow better, because one thing is always repurposed. Whether it's a line I'm playing or a chord, it's never just that one thing. It's always multiple things, which was a lesson Mick Goodrick gave Michael back then in the 80s. So I already touched on this earlier in the video. The mistakes, no one remembers them except you, but nothing is ever as bad or even actually as good as I think. The thing is. And often I'll overinflate my ego, listen to something while I'm playing, like, wow. And then I grab the recording of that jam session or gig and go like, yeah, it wasn't that good. It's like, I thought it was way better than what it was, right? That moment or that line or that chord, I thought I'd been very clever. So things are only what I add importance to is the thing that I'm going to overinflate, but none of that is actually real. It's my own inner mental game of ego that's making a thing good or a thing bad. It's like the things just are. And I know this is very Buddhist, this is very Zen, but that's actually a big takeaway of my life. Effective solo strategies go from having pauses in the right spots. And I had a lesson in college with Charles, our improv teacher, where he had us write down on paper 4 choruses of How High the Moon solo in G major. And, after like 2 or 3 choruses, you sort of run out of gas. Like, what else am I going to write and play? So I had guide tones to which I would have pick up in 16th notes and this and fancy stuff. And I think my solo was okay or good, but it was not great. And when I sat down with Charles, he just said like, look, that line's good, that you see you have 5 lines that are really good. Cool. You know what you're lacking? You're missing a release. I'm like, yeah, but there's a rest right there. No. You're missing the emotional release. So phrases need to breathe in jazz improv. This is such a crucial takeaway, in that it may be harmonically correct. I'm playing in the right scale, the right resolution, the 2/5, this, the diminished. Yeah, it's all there. But the real deal is when that idea is passing, and there's a rest, and it could be digested by myself and the audience. The band members, myself and the audience. When this occurs, the magic is there. There's a phrasing. It's like a broad stroke of a paintbrush, right? And there's this idea. It comes out. We let it go, and then on to the next thing. So emotional resolutions are really, really strong. For me, in that written solo, I would have needed 2 or 3 beats of rest for things to be fully digested. I saw some Keith Jarrett solos written on paper where he's got just an 8-note rest. And that's all you need to be fully emotionally released about the previous idea. It's context dependent, but we have to remember that machine gun style, like Pat Martino, works for Pat Martino and certain other very busy players, but most often than not, the most impactful lines and improvisations have a lot of rests. I wish I could go back 20 years and tell myself this. Seriously, it's been as genuine and authentic probably I've ever been on YouTube. Please like and subscribe and watch. We have 100 more of free lessons about chords, scales, improvisation, chord melodies. We have a bunch of standards already filmed. Also follow us on Facebook. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I will see you soon on Jazz Guitar Lessons. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. See you next time. Take care.